All right, today we're going to start the environment, the gaming environment. Everyone likes new tools, so here is a new tool. This may be your new best friend. This tool is called PureRef. It's free. I recommend that you definitely download it, save it to your computer, and use it. The purpose for it is like if we're on Pinterest, we have our Pinterest page up and then we can cycle through different images, and that's great. But the problem is that every time we go to Pinterest and we want to like zoom in, we have to zoom in on the whole website and zoom out, and it's a big hassle. So this PureRef one allows you to take images and put them alongside your screen like this, and then you can have just like huge libraries of images that you can use as reference. You can zoom in on them. You can move them around, so if you like these together or whatever, you can do that too. So I definitely recommend downloading it, installing it, and then when you want to add a new image to your stuff, so let's say that I like, scoot that aside, I like this image, I just drag this in here. Normally it doesn't take this long, but because I'm showing it, then it's going to take that long. Come on. Yes, yes, yes. Let's try that again. There we go. Oh, I did drag it. Just delete that. There we go. So you can see how like quick and easy this is. Just drag new images, drop them in there. You have a whole catalog. And then you can actually right-click and save this. It'll put it into your folder. And then next time you open up PureRef, you can go to open that, load this image sequence, or load this image stack of stuff. This is like a huge thing where people pretty much all over now are using this tool. And when you see some of these things like this, different areas where they're creating these kinds of things and these huge ones, this is like where you want to start working. That way, as you're building your stuff, goodbye. As you're building your stuff, it's right there, so you don't. It's not obtrusive or anything like that. I'm going to reopen Maya. What was it? I'm still learning the hotkeys for it. Come on, click. I don't need to save this. That's fine. I think it's Alt 1, 2, and 3. So you can change what color background you have on it. So you can go dark or you can go transparent. That's kind of like a cool way to see it. And some people even use this as like a reference as they're drawing something. So I can make this bigger and like put that right there next to like the door that I'm actually modeling. I gotta find that thing again. There it is. All right. So nice tool. So I'm gonna make a new project. If you have no idea what I'm doing right now, that means you didn't watch the how to make a project window video. So make sure you watch that. Sarcona Gaming Environment. All right. Let me close that window. I don't need that open right now. Let me jump back to this. Okay, so a couple house maintenance things that we need to worry about. So eventually these are going to go into Unreal Engine so that we can actually see how do we take something we built, put it into a gaming engine, and then actually like interact with it. So if we're going to build an environment, I want to be able to walk through the environment. Okay. So we need to know the proportions or dimensions inside Maya. We need to know the units inside of Unreal. That's where we're going to be going. So in Unreal, 1 UU, which is Unreal Unit, is equal to 1 centimeter by default. Okay, so if we build something in Maya that's 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, then that's what it's going to come into the real world as, into our Unreal world. Just as a general question, how tall is a typical human being in centimeters? Yeah, it's about 175, 178. Okay. There it is. So 178 centimeters is about 70 inches, which is about 5 foot, 10 inches tall. I'm under that. Now, in Maya, every single one of these units is a centimeter as well. So when I make a cube in Maya, it's 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. So I want to build the stuff to scale, okay? There are things that do help us out. So under the general editors, under content browser, this is a bunch of stuff that you can use for different projects. In this class, we're not using any of these, but you definitely can use them for other stuff besides what we're going to. So I'm going to grab, I'll just grab the generic human body. That's not anatomically correct, because I don't need any of that. I'm going to go into my perspective view. There it is. And that's how tall the character is. So that's when we build our world, that's what we have to keep in mind, is that if I build a doorway, that guy who is 178 centimeters, he needs to be able to fit through that door, okay? Now I can verify his height, so more tools that we can use inside Maya. If I go to create, I go to measure tools, and I go to distance tool. This is actually a measuring tool, so we can figure out how big small stuff is. So I'm going to go back to that tool. I'm going to hold down X and snap it right about here. And I'm going to go down to the bottom, hold down X, snap it about there. And then if I go back to perspective, you'll see that this guy is about 182 centimeters tall, which is, again, about regular height, okay? So those tools can be helpful for making sure that we're measuring things or making things the right size. Just need to resize this real quick because I want to be able to see my channel box while I model. So just shove that there, there we go, okay. All right, so he's just going to be my placeholder guy. That's where, when I build stuff, I just want to make sure that he can fit that. So if I built a door, obviously the door should be taller than him. If I built this hanger, this door should be taller than him, okay? So obviously we're dealing with two huge scales there when we talk about this huge hanger versus something like this, which is just a hallway, okay? So I'm just going to throw him onto a layer and just turn him off for now. I don't need him at this very second. Now, everything we build for a gaming engine should be very locked into some sort of grid system. We don't want to start building stuff randomly because as we start putting things together, we need to have some way to kind of lock things up so it's a little bit easier to work with. So I'm going to, let me bring my guy back for a second. I'm going to go to my front view. And you'll see that my grid kind of goes away. As I zoom way out, it just disappears, right? So I'm going to customize my grid a bit. So I'm going to go to Display, Grid, Option Box. Right now, this is kind of set up as 12 units wide is how long that initial square grid is that we get in perspective. And then there's grid lines, major ones, every 5 units. And then those get broken up 5 times. So it's like basically each one of these is a centimeter. That's going to be very difficult to work with when we're not working in centimeters. We're working basically more in like a metering system. So if I said I wanted this to be grid lines every, let's say, 100, and then I want to subdivide that 10 times, and then I hit apply. So now the major grid lines, let me change this axis to, oops, wrong one. Let me change the grid lines here to like red. So now each one of these red ones is 100 centimeters, which is how many, which is what? 100 centimeters equals what? A meter, right? And so each one of these then equals 10 centimeters. So it's a little bit easier to kind of like conceptualize what things are. Is that right? Yeah, 1, 2, yep, okay. So the 12 here doesn't really matter. This is more for perspective. When we go into the perspective view, that's the 12. So if I make this, 500 or so, I'll make that bigger. But I'm not going to need to worry about that too much right now. Okay, so now this makes a little bit more sense, a little easier to use the grid for modeling purposes. So I can start by creating stuff here, but what's going to happen is, let's say that I created a plane, and then I rotate the plane like so, and then I'm trying to get these pieces to line up with specific areas. It's very difficult to do because I need this corner, let's say, to snap right here. and all the dimensions to be lined up right. So I'm not going to even bother with that at the moment. I'm going to use, under my mesh tools, I'm going to use the create polygon tool. And what I'm going to do is just line up just like a basic, like this is what I want my stuff to look like. And then I'm going to start building stuff on top of that that's a little bit more refined, okay? Look at when you do anything for gaming, you have to think of multi-purposing. So stuff like this, you can see is also used here, it's also used there, it's also used here. And if I switch to the other side, you'll see that those are also used here and there and there. So when we build these in Maya, what we're going to do is we're going to build the shell of this, and then we'll build the pieces, and then in the game engine, we can duplicate those pieces and have multiple iterations of that, okay? We don't want to bring in, let's say, this entire room exactly as is, because it takes up a lot of geometry that the gaming system doesn't need, okay? I'm going to go here. I'm going to use my grid, so I'm going to hold down X for my grid snap, and I'm going to click a point right there at that red one. I'm going to click a point at that red one. That's my ground. And then if I'm trying to go with something like along this line, you can see how it kind of like goes up at an angle like this, kind of like a hexagon. So I'm going to use the other grid lines here, and I'm still holding X. And I'm going to go up to, not that high, I think I'm going to go this high. And I'm just going to mirror that on the other side. So this is 2 red over. I'm hurting my eyes doing this. Do that, do that. Oops, see, and I messed up, so I'm going to hit backspace. I'm going to hold X again, click there. All right, so there's the framework of my hallway. And then I hit enter, okay? So now that the guy is there, this is very easy to see the scale of if the guy looks like he could actually walk down this hallway, definitely he looks like he could walk down the hallway and have plenty of headroom, okay? So now he can just go away. So now I'm just going to extrude this. I'm going to hold down X and snap this way back here. Go. And I still have my backface culling on. I may turn this off. I don't know why it's every time I gotta do this twice. There we go. And then I'm going to go to extrude, and then I'm going to extrude this, and I'm going to snap it all the way to the back of that. So this will be about 1,000, a negative 1,000. Okay. Now the outside's black. That's fine because we're concerned with the inside of this. So let me bring back my guy. Yeah, that's all right. It doesn't seem like it's it's very deep, right? So if we're going to walk around, let's make this really deep. So let's go to like negative 3,000. All right, so that's cool. That seems like we'd have some room to kind of like walk around and have some different props in here. All right, cool. So I like that. I'm going to go to my faces. I'm going to delete. I'm going to try to select this face there and delete. All right. So now I have the shell of this. Everything is kind of snapped and locked into these grid lines. So now as I start building all my other stuff, I'm using the grid lines again to start building everything else. So going with something like this, I know that that line is going to line up perfectly with something here. If we were building this as a different piece, as like a piece where I'm trying to keep everything as one, typically I would insert edge loops, I would extrude it from that surface. I don't want to do that because I want this to be a separate module. So I'm going to jump back to my front view, jump back to that create polygon tool, go into wireframe, and then I'm going to draw basically the same line. So I'm holding X, click, click, click. Okay, so those pieces right there are the starting pieces of this. I think I need one more. Yeah, because if I click that, I get this. So that's not going to help me out, but I'll still use it. Okay, so this gives me basically a triangle piece, which is fine. I'm going to extrude and then just nudge this over. And again, I'm not going to just like leave this as a random 21 point whatever. I want this to be locked into something rounded. So 20, 40, 25, 35, something locked into a solid number, okay? Rounded up to 5, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give this the thickness that I think that thing should be. So 50, maybe 80. All right, we'll go 75 just to make it that way. And then I'm going to delete this, okay? And if I go to, I think I have that still in my setting. I must have it down here in my setting under display, polygons, yes. Backface culling off. There we go. Cool. All right. So there it is. So now I'm going to delete all these pieces here that I just made. And, oops, that was a fail right there. Hold on. Let me grab this again. Let me isolate it. Yeah, I have that piece. Why didn't you stay there? There we go. All right, there it is. So let me just return my backface culling off on this. All right, cool. So this gives me that shape. It gives me those pieces right there, lined up exactly the thickness I need. So now I'm just going to go and extrude this, and then just use my regular move tool to move it forward. Okay? Now again, come down here to wherever I've moved this. Oops, sorry, there won't be something for moving that one. All right, so I'm going to use this up here as my guide for how far to move this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and one more, 5. That looks like a good depth. Okay, everything doesn't need to be locked in. The major stuff, whatever's connecting items together, that has to be locked together. This I could pull out, whatever, because it's not going to affect anything else. Cool. So now I can add maybe an edge loop. Oops, not that. An edge loop right here. Let me grab this face. All right, this is black. I'm going to reverse it. There we go. Now grab the faces. There we go. Extrude this, move it forward, flatten it out. Maybe grab this edge and just shuffle that back. That's good. All right, and if the whole thing seems too much, let me just grab these and slide that a little bit further back like that. Oops. I need that one too. There we go. So that seems more appropriate, whatever this thing actually is supposed to be. Maybe like a computer terminal, I'm assuming. All right, cool. So let's unisolate that. Good. I'm going to break the floor off of the rest of the surface so I can customize what the floor looks like. So I'm just going to grab this and extract it. And then isolate just the floor. Okay, now looking at the floor in a lot of these, not just that one specifically, but like this one, you'll see that most floors have some sort of paneling that goes into making them floors. So it's not just like one big cement floor, it's individual panels. Maybe they have stuff stored underneath, whatever the case is. So I want to make something like that. I also like the idea of having a little channel that would run along the floor too, okay? So I'm going to do that as well. So I need some divisions in here. So I'm going to go to my insert edge loops. I'm going to put a division right down the center, go to split ring, and then say 0.5. Now that gives it right in the middle of my surface. Then I can go into this, do a bevel, and these are just adding divisions. It doesn't matter if I use split ring again, or edge loop again, or any of these. I just need more divisions. So now what I'm doing is looking at the spacing here and trying to figure out how big are each panel. Is the panel going to be like a tile? Like if you walk in the hallway, the tiles are, I think, 16 by 16 or 12 by 12, whatever it is. Or are they more huge, like 2 foot by 2 foot panels? So that's what I'm kind of like guesstimating here. Now as I do this, you'll see that these, because of the way that I did this, is automatically lining up with these grid lines. And so it's just making my job a lot easier because now everything again is lining up perfectly as I build things. All right, so I think that looks pretty good like that. So I'll have this here, this here. I'm gonna go a little bit further, like 0.7, I think. 0.9, yeah, that'll be good. Actually, I like 0.9 better. I'm gonna go with maybe a little bit bigger tiles here. Let me add another bevel here just to split the difference there. And let me hide the grid in this view. I don't need to see that. Okay, so now the plan is this one, this one, this one, and this one are going to be my tiled areas. So I have to break those up the other direction too. And then this one and that one, oops, this one will be a channel. It's a vent, it's something, I don't know what, but it's something on the side, okay? So I'm going to break this up again. So I'm going to go to my edge loop. This time I'm going to use the option box. If you remember, this is 2,000, I think, or 3,000 long. So I'm going to go to my multiple edge loops. Try 20 first and click. And that doesn't feel square, so I'm going to hit undo. go to 30. Click again, that feels square, okay? Because I'm not using random wild numbers and I'm kind of locking everything into a grid, this process becomes a lot easier, okay? Later down the line, if I decided I wanted to replace each one of these tiles with something else, like I want to put a hole in it and make a new tile that would just fit right there, my job has just become a lot easier because everything is, again, locked into those grid units, okay? So I'll reset the tool, close that, and now I'm going to go into my face mode, and I'm going to grab everything but these edge ones. I'm going to extrude something very similar that I did on the buildings. These numbers are now going to be huge because, you know, we're dealing with a different scale. Maybe not 1, maybe like 0.5. That should be good. Okay, that's good. Let me grab these. Grab these. Okay, so now I have everything selected. I have all the big faces selected. I have these side runners selected. I want to switch that, so I grab the grout basically because I want to push that down some. I'm going to hold shift, marquee the whole thing, and that should have given me just those lines. Oops, if I zoom in, come on. There we go. We can see I have just those lines selected. Back to the building one, I could use the selection tool, using the constraints, grabbing all the ones with the smaller area. That would also work. I'm just going to extrude this and then just knock this down just a little bit. This isn't going to affect anything as far as like locking something together, but I still want to make sure it's, you know, somewhat good. So let's say 1, oops, right, -1. There we go. That's good. So it went down, which is what I wanted. Back to object mode. And so now I have this ground plane. So now I'm going to grab these and this. Oops. All right, now that area, I may not want to have all these divisions. I may want to have, let's say, bigger slats that I would use for my venting, right? So what I could do is I can just, I'm going to delete these. So let me just deselect one of these and delete it just so we can see. And then I'm going to use my measure tool just to verify the size of it. So if I hold down V, which is snap to point, I click here, and I hold down V and I click here, that gives me 20.20. Okay, 20. I don't know where that 0 is coming from. We'll just ignore that. So now I'm going to create a new item. Mesh tool, create polygon. And I'm just going to create a new shape that's going to be lined up right there. There. So I'm holding down V to snap it. And I'm going in a specific order. I either go clockwise or I go counterclockwise. I wouldn't want to like cross them, and I'll show that in a second. Okay, hit enter. Oops. And now I should have just this one piece all by itself already lined up to exactly where that other spot's going to be. Okay. Let me delete this row now because I don't need that. Come on. There we go. And now this lined up perfectly with the edge of that. I should be able to do whatever I want with it and not screw up the other piece. So insert edge loops. The other one was 30, so this one I'm going to do, let's say, 15. I don't think I like that. Let me go with, let's see what 20 looks like. Nope, I'm going to go with 10, I think. I want these like really big. Yeah, there we go. That looks good. Okay, so back to my tool and reset that. All right, now notice how I haven't duplicated this to the other side. Why bother doing them twice? I'm just going to do it once and then duplicate it. So I'm taking that, I'm going to extrude it. Keep faces together is off. A little bit of offset, so maybe 2 here, maybe Yeah, I think 2 is probably a good number there. And then I'm going to extrude this again and then just push it down. -5. Okay, so now I have this like little channel right there. Now I can take this and duplicate it. The pivot's already centered, so I just duplicate it and make it -1 in the X direction. I can unisolate. And now you can see how I'm building my little environment. And again, everything is lining up perfectly side by side, exactly where we need them to. All right, so that's cool there. What else do we want to put in this? So that's the kind of idea there. Oh, I should add something on the ceiling because the ceiling is kind of boring. So I'm going to add some pipes. Everything should be low res, so you'll notice that there's no spot in here where I have divisions that are just useless, okay? Even if I created a plane, I want that plane to have plenty of, or very few divisions. There we go. So this, and this should be, like we said, 2000, should be about that, nope. Oh, on the cylinder here, the height is always like doubled, so reset that. There we go. And then if I just reset my numbers here to -1000, all right, and I'm just guessing on these numbers. If it's wrong, it's going to be obviously wrong, okay? I'm just going to shove this into the corner. This doesn't matter where this is specifically because it's just like a prop that can be floating really. All right, so that's good. I'm going to lower the divisions on this to, let's say, 12. I'm going to get rid of the caps and just leave it like that. Okay, and then again, I'm going to look through my images, try to find something that, maybe I want to include in this. I have to do something with the door. I'll get to that. Maybe I should fancy this up a little bit more. So this is kind of like nice here, but this looks kind of weird just being this big long thing. So maybe I should put a TV screen or something there. So I'll make a TV screen. And this isn't something, again, that is going to be reliant on locking in with another surface. So this doesn't really matter where this is because it's just going to be like this floating TV screen. But I still, as I model stuff, I want to make sure that I'm using numbers that are just nice and round. So 10, 100, and I don't know. Not 100 there because that would be weird, right? That's like a weird square TV. 75 and then 100, that's cool, okay. All right, so that's good. And then I'm just gonna add some fanciness to this, just extruding that in, extruding this in. There we go, so there's our TV screen. Okay, now here's my guy, so I can use that as a guide to where I should put this. So if he's going to be looking at the screen, it should be roughly about that height. And because I've already established this is a computer screen, I wouldn't need, like in this one, right here, I wouldn't need these throughout the entire thing. There's no reason to have like 50 TV screens throughout this entire hallway. So some of these will just be this, other ones will be this with that. Maybe I'll have a little keyboard here that could be like a hologram type thing. Maybe this would project down. That could be something I add eventually. All right, so that's good. Let me throw in bevels on stuff. So I grabbed all the pieces, add bevels, and I'm going to do 2 divisions on these and lower that down. That's good. And then the same thing here. I need to clean this up though. So stuff that doesn't get shown gets deleted. So this, and that doesn't get shown. So it gets deleted. Okay. And then everything else on here, I can put bevels on. Okay, now we're not smoothing anything out. When we do 3, like if I click on this and hit 3, this is a smoothed out version of this. If we were rendering it, that's what it would look like. When we go to a game engine, that doesn't work at all. The hitting 3 does nothing, okay? Whatever we have here as the 1 version, that's what the game engine's gonna take. So that's what that's going to be set up as. Cool. I like these. There's little doors. It's kind of hard to see, but there's little like doorways there. So I think I'm going to divide this up even further. So let me break the ceiling off. So I'm just going to extract that. I'm going to go to my edge loop. I'm going to add in some divisions here. Let's say 10. I'll get these kind of synced up with the ground divisions. And then each one of these panels here, I could customize so that I would have, let's say, different iterations of panels that I would use. So this panel I'm just going to use as my example panel, and I'm just going to extract this one. Okay, so he's all by himself. And then I'm going to customize what I want that specific panel to look like. So let's go and add some divisions to this. 10 is good. No, it's not good. 3 will be good. 3. That way and that way. And now I'm just going to go through and kind of tweak these different pieces. Okay, so now we're going to need a different tool. I need to take these edges and slide them up this way and slide these ones down that way. If I go to my scale, it's going to, it'll work partly. That actually works a lot better than I was expecting. Look at that. All right, pretend that didn't work, so I want to show a different tool. I'm going to go to the mesh tools. I'm going to go to the slide offset edge loop tool. Oh, that's not it. Yeah, that's not it. Edit mesh. Mesh tools, crease, slide edge, there it is. All right, so I click on it, then I can middle mouse button drag this wherever I need to. There we go. And middle mouse button drag that one where I need it. All right, then maybe I don't need this one right here, so I'm going to control delete that one. That's good. And I'll scale these ones out. And then maybe I don't need that middle one either. Okay, so that's good there. So that gives me a nice little border that I could then extrude again and then add a little bit of an offset. 2, 5, that's good. And then extrude that again, and then maybe push that down some. Extrude that again. And then extrude that again, and maybe just push that up. There we go. Okay, so back to object mode. Turn this off. So now we've just created this kind of neat panel that would be right here. Now just so we can kind of lay out how some things are going to be, this device is going to be lined up against this wall. Wherever I put it along the wall, obviously if I put it here, it's going to interfere with this thing, right? So it makes more sense, obviously, to be in the center of this, so that's what I'll probably do. But then this panel wouldn't be right here. Maybe this panel is like every other one, okay? So once I have this set up, I can grab, if I click the right stuff, and grab, come on, this face, grab that face, grab this face, and that face. And that face, there we go. And I can delete those faces, and then I can grab this, and I can snap it right to those spots. So I'm going to hold down D and V to move the pivot over here. So I'm using my middle mouse, trying to snap it right to the corner. And it's right there, okay? Now I'm going to duplicate it and then just hold V and just snap it right here. So that should be lined up almost. So close. There we go. Then if I hit Shift D, it'll jump to the next one. Shift D, jump to the next one. Shift D, jump to the next one. And I just have one more that I'm going to drag back, whoops, all the way over to this side. Okay, so already that side is already starting to look a lot fancier than it was a second ago. This channel, I think I need to add something to it. I'm going to add like a grate on top of it. I think that would be a bit helpful. So I'm going to go and add a plane, but I need to not just create a plane. I just keep going there by habit. I'm going to go to my Create Polygon tool. Now, I'll show you what I was talking about before about going in the same direction each time. Pretending that I need to create a plane right here. If I go to hold V and I click, so far I've gone clockwise, so I'm going like around this way. If I were to cross over to this side and then cross back to this side, you'll see how I get a big X in there. It doesn't like that, okay? So I would just make sure I keep going in the same direction, and now I get something that is not a bad surface and it works. Okay. So I'm going to click here, I'm going to hold down V, I'm going to click there and click here. There we go. And then this is backwards, so I'm going to mesh display reverse it, and then I'm going to leave that right there. Okay. Eventually this will be duplicated throughout the entire thing, so I'll worry about that later. The same thing with these. I have more work that I want to do on these ones, not him, before I fully duplicate them, but I like to do this often. There's many times where I want to model something, put it in place, and see how it's going to look. It might look too busy and I don't end up using it. So I will constantly do this where I have these things put in place. Later down the line, I'm going to go through and delete all those, add more bevels to this, do some other stuff to this one, then duplicate it and put it down the chain. But for now, I'm just going to leave all those in there. Because again, it helps me kind of visualize the entire scene. I think this needs something too. This needs like an arm or something. Where are you at? Wrong view, this view, there we go. So I'm going to make this bigger, like so, put this here. All right, that's good. What? What does that want to be, 25? I guess so. Nope. All right, it's like somewhere in the middle here, like 27.5. Oh. That part doesn't matter, so you're going to stick in the wall anyway. All right. And then this I can kind of do more of a free-form kind of modeling to it, just to give this a little bit of look to what this is supposed to look like. I hit the wrong button. There we go. All right, so this will be just like a little bracket to hold the TV in place. That way, if our character's walking over here, it doesn't look like it's just floating. That makes more sense. Cool. All right. Clean up on this. I don't see this face. I don't see that face, so I delete them. The TV, I do see the top face, the bottom, the back, so I want to keep all those. This thing here, I see all those faces, so I'd want to keep that. Let me make sure that this isn't a... Oops. Yeah, that's the same face. Okay, good. Okay, the same thing I did here, I could do up there. You can see the kind of stuff that this one has set up where they have these like panels or vents or something. I could add that. Instead of doing the simple channel down here, eventually this plane will have a texture on it. So this assignment we're going to get into texturing. It'll be a great like a wire mesh, okay, or something high-tech looking. So I'm going to leave it as a plane for now. When I do the texture, that's when it'll look more like this, okay. But I could have something look like that. I could create a big channel on the top, have wires going through instead of having them exposed like I do here. I could just make a little vent and have stuff in there. I should think about lighting as well, so let's make some lighting in here. So I'm going to go and grab my Create tool, Create Polygon. Turn my grid back on so I can see it. And then I'm going to go to, let's say that's the middle, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be good. And I'll go up 2 red units. And then I'll go over 5 this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that way. All right. So there's my light that I'm going to use. I'm just going to extrude this. And negative 25. And then reverse this. I'm going to delete this top face because I don't need that. And then I can just kind of scale this in like this. I could scale like that, but I think like this looks good. I think that's going to be cool that way. And then bevels around. Too much. 0.2, 0.1. All right, that should be good. Okay, the sizing of this doesn't matter because this part isn't touching anything. So I can kind of just put, wherever I want. It's mainly about the items that we're going to be duplicating and putting around that we would need that. So that's cool like that. All right. Now at some point I want to get into what is this going to look like render-wise. Again, something we always consider. We always want to look at what the rendering would look like because that gives us a good idea when we get into Unreal about what things are doing. So let me snap this into a position here. And I'm going to create, I guess that's one of the bad things about this thing. I have to shrink all my stuff. Let's create a light, make this bigger, rotate it down. There we go. Back in the top view. Now even though we're going to be going into Unreal with this, I still like to have lighting in here because that's going to help me see what things are looking like before I get in there. So there's my light. Let's just push this down some. Squishy that over. All right, now I can adjust that after. Okay. Let me go and render this. The lights that you're doing in Maya, they're not going to transfer over into Unreal? Correct. We'll have to remake the lighting inside of Unreal. So we don't want to spend too much time on it, but we still want to be able to visualize our stuff, right? So I'm going to crank this up, obviously, to crazy amounts. There we go. That's good. It is. Let's turn this on. There we go. So now we can actually see the light up here, and then our creepy guy that's kind of like shiny too, right? Now we can take this and duplicate it. So I'm going to group the whole package. I'm going to center pivot it. That should put the pivot right on that red line. Yep, it did. And now when I duplicate this, I'm going to skip a section and then put it at the next red line. I duplicate it again, skip a section, put it at the next red line. And I'm using all my snapping tools that I learned in the hotkey video to see how to do that. Nope, not there, right there. Is that right? Is it right?
Yeah, it is.
Yep. That. And I find that stuff like this it really is kind of like a motivator to keep going on stuff. Once you start seeing more of a final product here, and you get to see what your scene is looking like, and you start adding more stuff to it, it really helps kind of like conceptualize other things that could go into your environment. It's hard to see up there. Let's make this a little bit brighter. Right, so I can see the kind of detail that I'm getting here, see the detail I'm getting there, make sure my guy feels like he's actually in this environment. Yeah, that's pretty good there. Another thing I like to look at is having an ambient occlusion on there. So I'm going to go to my render settings, go to my render settings there. And I'm just going to add in an AO remember, you can't just do that. You have to go through the whole process of selecting it, then going to the attribute editor, then clicking on that shader, and then going to AO. Oops, sorry, then going to ambient occlusion. And then as I render this, now I can switch between these and again get a better idea. That's way too blown out because I have this set. Let me just turn that back off. There we go. Yeah, that's all right. Let me just adjust that a little bit further. I think this far clip might be too much. Under one screen, this is incredibly painful to have to move around all these windows. There we go. All right, so let's put this at 10. Let's see what that looks like. That's much better there. Now, if you were doing a game in the real world, typically this kind of thing, you'd be rendering these things out daily. Like, where are you at today? And then you'd render out, here's my color, here's my ambient occlusion. The same stuff we're doing for our final assignments, for the past ones, you're doing those things before you leave each day. So I would take this, I would take my other one, I would maybe take my depth of field, throw those into Nuke, and then I would have something that's, at least the client can get an idea of this is where my game is going. So even this thing here, this whole setup, I'm going to group this, again, so I can visualize what's happening inside my scene. I'm going to center pivot it. I'm going to go to my top view. And I'm going to snap this. So I believe right here. Let's make sure we're in the right view. Yeah, we want to get this right between these two. So let's see, that's where this one ends, is right there. Come on, right there. Right there. Okay. So that should be roughly in the right spot. So I'm going to duplicate this, slide it over. That's good. And Shift D, whoops. Shift D, Shift D, Shift D. Delete that one because it doesn't belong there. And I'm just going to group all these and call these wall pieces. And then I'll take these ones, group all these, and these are my lights. So you can see we're going to start to get really busy with a lot of stuff that we have here. So we want to start labeling things. Side gutter. Oops, that's actually both of those. Let's group both of those together. Close gutters. That locator we don't need. This poly surface should be my room. And then we should have pieces inside here. It's probably a good idea now to just grab everything and delete history. There you go. And then start picking on items that we're going to be separating. So, yep. So these pieces here. Wall trim. And I'm just going to middle drag it out so they're separated. This is the ceiling. Middle drag that out. Right now these are the walls. As I start breaking them off, they will start creating more of these poly surface group things. That's fine. There's the floor. Oops, that's not the floor. Pull that out and then delete the room. Okay, and now this is a lot easier too as I start doing stuff that I could grab things like the wall pieces, duplicate them, and then just flip them over to the other side, and now I have pieces on that side. What happened to them? Oh, I typed in 3 somehow. There we go. That side also. And then I can see, whoops, I'm going to have this pipe going through it, so that obviously can't be there. That'll have to be adjusted. Maybe it'll be here. And then again, I can go through my render, take a look at the render, see if I'm liking the look of it, if I'm liking the depth of how everything is kind of fitting together. And then I just keep progressing, adding more stuff, okay? I'm going to stop it there. That way you get an idea of how to start this thing, where we're going with it. Everyone's going to have different items they add to theirs, but the process is going to be exactly the same. If you do something round like this, that's going to be a bit trickier. to do, just because you don't have nice even corners to add to your stuff. So I would kind of avoid that for your first one. If you stick with more geometric shapes like these, you can really do a lot of stuff. This little piece right here is no different than this piece right there. Okay, I would create my walls, and then I would create this like trim piece that would go around it. And that way for this, I can duplicate it for this one because it looks like it's right there too. Same thing with the stuff up here. I would create the floor, create the walls, and then just add stuff on top of that. Same thing here. You can see again these patterns repeating over and over again where it's just the same stuff. Here's more stuff pattern-wise. It's not like anything there. Here's these little things down there, so you can see we got the same kind of setup. There's little boxes, okay? That's the same one we used. Here's some more conceptual art stuff. Okay, same idea here, more things that are just like repeated over and over again. If you do use anything circular, like a cylinder, one thing I will mention is don't just scale it in one direction. So if I were just to do this, that looks very obvious that I've just squished a cylinder. Same thing with a sphere. If I wanted to use a shape like that, typically I'm going to take the divisions down. Let me jump to my top view so I can see this better. And what I would do is I would grab, let's say, these two, and I would push these down. And then I would, I think pulling these out would be a better idea there. Then I would grab these, and then I would pull these out like this, and then maybe push those in like that. Maybe I'll grab these ones, just push these in a little bit. So this is going to give me a more realistic looking shape than taking that cylinder and just squashing it, because you'll see there's typically not that kind of surface set up. And this alone is, oops, I just hid that, is a pretty good starting point too for having just this kind of like base shape, right? Instead of doing the geometric like hexagon, what is this, 12 sides, 10 sides? It's a decagon. You can do stuff like that. And eventually you want to save your stuff. Okay, so start from there. Next class I'll go over some more stuff, adding different things to it. I'll do the door next time, and go over the sheet. Questions on it yet? We'll probably have about 3 weeks on this one, just because of the depth that we're going to be going into on the modeling, the UV layout, the texturing, and then bringing it into Unreal. Surprisingly, Unreal will be the easiest part of this entire thing. The UV layout typically is the hardest. People have a difficult time taking something that's 3D and unwrapping it and making textures look good. We'll also be introducing, if you want to download another new software, because why not? We'll be getting into Substance Painter. So this is one of the industry standards for doing texture painting. So things like labels, decals, any of that stuff, we're going to be able to just go in there and just put stuff on there. If we wanted that TV to have a picture, we can do that like in Photoshop. That's not a big deal. But if we wanted a label that would say warning across a certain area and have certain looks to it, Substance is where we would go for this. So we'll be getting introduced to this, and then later on in the semester we'll get more into it. This is free for students. So if you say get Substance, education, login, you'll get a login for, I think it's 18 months or something like that. You'll be able to download any of the Substance programs. I would recommend getting Substance Painter. Just get all of them. Anyone that's free, just get all of them because they're all good.
Is that about 100K?
Where are we looking?
The pro license revenue, the indie license revenue. Is that the actual prices?
Oh, yeah, if you make above that.
Okay.
Yeah, so the indie license you can use as long as you're making under $100,000. The pro license, if you're making $100,000 to $100 million, and the enterprise, if you're making $100 million or more.
Yeah, I would.
Maybe I'll do. That's like Unreal. Unreal is free, but then after you make $100,000 off your game, then you have to start paying them. It's not a bad problem to have, though. Is it? Cool. So if you want to download that too, eventually we'll get into using that.